It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
The guys broke my heart in the content meeting this morning.
You
did.
He buried that lead. Did you know he did?
I mean, it was last week we're preparing the show, and I'm thinking about money is the lubricant that allows wealth creation to occur.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people, we've done a whole show on, does money bring happiness? No. Is money going to be the thing that's going to make you look cool to the people that have all treated you bad in the past? No. It's basically a tool. It's a lubricant to create wealth and other things for the future so you can spend time on your means. Well, there's a sci-fi book out there, Dune.
I'm just going to zone out of this part of the show. I want to just hang out over here.
Y'all share with me because I look at money as the spice must flow, meaning that it is one of those things where this is what's going to create the process, but don't misunderstand what money actually is in the wealth building process. But the part that y'all broke my heart as you shared, this movie has been pushed off until 2020.
Yeah, they're coming out with
2021.
The movie Dune, which some of us were excited about, and the rest of us weren't, Brian. And
look,
and
there are a lot of our
off.
viewers that are my age. They're gonna be just as excited. Don't
you? Know
you guys don't know. You just wait. We're about to see a bunch of people my age that are just as sad as I am that movie's been pushed off. But we'll keep on. Or James Bond. We'll probably go get James Bond, which I love James Bond too, by the way. But seriously, money is the lubricant that's going to create wealth. So, and this is such an important thing to me that I want to even pick on myself a little bit in the fact that I get it. Sometimes on this show, I'll use the words save and invest interchangeably.
We literally had someone earlier in the live chat comment on that. Oh, you're not talking about saving, you're talking about investing.
And I get that. And truthfully, it's a valid statement. But the reality of the situation is, if you're thinking about in terms of financial order of operations, where you are with your money, each dollar has a purpose. You're a good field general. You're using your army of dollars well. That there is, I do think about it interchangeably. In the fact that if you're saving money, that money's not sitting on the sidelines, sitting stagnant, unless it's part of the emergency reserves core, unless it's part of the deductibles covered part. But everything else has got a plan, and it's probably getting put to work somewhere.
Yep.
So, but that is something I'll try to work on. But I do think about those things interchangeably, is that if we're saving the money, we're probably putting that money to work.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And what I think is so interesting is if you were to poll most folks and say, hey, all right, we're doing this show on ingredients. And a lot of you guys did this. Hey, we're doing this show on ingredients. What would you think are the big ingredients you need to be successful? And people are going to say, oh, well, you need money. You got to have lots of money. If you want to be wealthy, you got to have lots of money, lots of money, lots of money.
That's false.
It's false. What I think is so interesting about money is it's not even all that important, because just like we said with discipline, if you figure it out early, it only takes a little bit of money to do some really, really big things in your financial life.
It really is that pebble that you're starting to roll down the hill. You could do snowballs, you can do, mud, because we're from the South. I mean, it doesn't matter what you want to start as the smallest building component. It can start really small. And like I said, quit thinking linearly, think compounding exponentially. It turns into something huge.
Yeah, we have a great deliverable out on the Money Guy website. You can go to moneyguy.com/resources. This is called How Powerful Are Your Dollars? It's the first time I've ever gotten it right on the first try. And this shows two things. One, this does show, okay, how much do I have to save each month to be a millionaire? And instead of going in 5-year increments, this is at each age. So if you are a 33-year-old, you can see exactly how much you need to save to get to a millionaire. And you can see early on in life, the earlier you start, the less money is required. But what I think is so valuable is if you look at the wealth multiplier, how powerful your dollars can be. $1, one little piece of money, one single dollar for someone that's the age of 20 is the equivalent to $88 by the time they get to retirement. The earlier you can figure out this multiplier, the better off you're going to be. So if you're someone who's been saving and you're someone who's 32 and you say, you know what, I've got $15,000 saved up and I just feel like I'm behind the gun. You ought to take that $15,000, multiply it times your wealth multiplier, which would be 18.05, and that's what you're on track to have by the time you get to 65 without saving another dime. Your dollars can be that powerful, and it doesn't take a lot to go a long, long way.
Well, I mean, that's why we are constantly, the biggest thing I think, I hope people recognize, there are key components that I say so often. It's because I want to make sure that you incorporate this. And the biggest is saving 20 to 25% of your gross income. And I get it. If you're in your 20s, you're like, that's tough, Brian. Can't do that yet. We've all been broke in our 20s. And the good news is you might not even have to be at that point in your 20s because as you're figuring things out. But really, by the time you're in your early 30s, I really do want you to be hitting on that 20 to 25% of your gross income. And here's why. There's a quick exercise we can do. Can you build wealth with a low income?
Can you build wealth? Yeah, we just showed it. For a 20-year-old,
exactly.
It's $95 a month. Unequivocally, yes, you can build wealth with low income.
But can you build wealth with a zero savings rate? And the answer is no, because you can multiply $1 million times zero. It's still going to be zero. So I'll rephrase the question. Can you build wealth with a low savings rate? And the answer is no if you don't start early. And if you don't have a big enough shovel, that's your term, shovel, and the fact that you're talking about how big is your income.
That's right.
And that's the parts where it gets much more difficult if your savings rate doesn't reflect what is needed from the time as well as your age, which those things are all interrelated. You're going to start noticing these things are relatives to each other. They are cousins that you better respect each component of this wealth creation because they interchangeably work with each other.
All right, so you're like, all right, guys, I'm bought in. I'm on this money train. Now what do I do? Okay, what do I do? Well, we think that there are two paths, and this is maybe the most simple, most basic financial advice that we could ever give. When it comes to the money piece of the three ingredients, you really have two options if you need more of it. You can make more or you can spend less. It's literally binary. It's that simple. If you need more money to be able to put into savings, more money to put into your portfolio, more money to put into your army of dollar bills, there are only two ways to do that. Make more or spend less.
So let's talk about these two things that you can control.
Sure.
This is the first one, the making more money. Pay attention to that college major, guys.
Oh, that's a huge one.
I mean, because there's a lot of young people that watch this show, and I will tell you, as I've gotten older, I'm amazed how decisions from such a small window of my life have impacted everything. I mean, I'm talking about. I've even thought about, because I was a finance major.
Sure.
I switched to accounting. Would we have all this if I'd have stayed in finance? I just don't know.
There's a chance not.
Because look, back when I was, things are different now. Bo actually has a financial planning degree. Meaning you can actually go get a degree in financial planning now. You couldn't do that when I was there. Finance people typically turn out to be salesmen at stock brokerage firms. I mean, that was kind of the path that scared me out of that major, is because I was like, I don't know anybody with money, and I look like I'm 12. There's no way I'm going to be successful in this industry.
And, I think it's picking your major is one big piece of it, but I think even probably picking your school is another big piece of it too. When you were coming through, what was the most prestigious accounting program in the country? Do you remember, like, what's a school that's like known for accounting?
Well, I mean, at the
time, this is back then. Well,
I mean, it's going to be embarrassing to all of us dogs. Florida had a really good accounting program at the time.
I immediately regret this analogy.
Be careful asking me questions that you don't know the answer to.
Here's the point that I'm making. Someone comes out with a degree from Florida with an accounting degree, and they had to rack up tons of student loan debt to do that, right? They had to have tons and tons and tons of student loan debt. Someone else comes out with an accounting degree from a smaller, more affordable in-state school, but they both go out and they both pass the CPA exam and they have a few years of experience. Was all of that student loan debt that person acquired at Florida, was it worth it? Or perhaps could they have achieved the same ultimate career goal, career trajectory, career fill in the blank if they would have gone the less expensive route?
And I'll tee this up in a better way, because we get a little flack on this because we never give this college hack that people scream it in our comment section. I'm like, you're right. Why don't we mention it? what about going to community college for 2 years and then transferring into that prestigious school? There's a lot of people, their diplomas look exactly like my diploma. It's just, it was a lot cheaper
That's exactly right.
to do it those 2 years. So, and look, if you got the money without going and getting in debt, or, family members, go have the full experience. But I love the situation that you got to get creative so that you don't straddle yourself with lots of debts and other things that hang over you for a long time. Let's talk about new jobs. I mean, let's think maybe you're not in
the college age.
Maybe you're in
the
I want to give you a perfect case study. Anybody here, a lot of you guys, when you graduate to Abundance Cycle, you see we have an awesome team behind us.
Best financial planning team in the entire country. I'm going to say that.
And I've got a lead advisor here named Eric Hell. Eric doesn't even know he's in the show notes.
He has no idea.
But Eric moved from Texas. He, Big Four accountant, was working in industry, money guy fan, reached out to me. And by goodness, he's moved from Texas to Tennessee, and he's now part of the team. Guys, that is talking about making tracks and controlling your destiny and seeing an opportunity and trying to figure out, am I doing what I need to be? What was I put on this earth to do? He did it.
Yep.
I mean,
absolutely.
I think about we have that case study. I could do that on a lot of other employees and others. You can look at your own life and go, am I where I'm supposed to be?
Sure.
Question that and figure out, is there an opportunity? And maybe you even have to move down a little bit or even sideways to make that happen. I know that sounds kind of contrarian, but I need to ask you yourself, quit thinking in 12-month increments. Start thinking 3, 5, 10 years, because that, just like investing is long-term in nature, so it's living your life, guys. So get out of 12-month mindsets and think more long-term.
But, changing jobs and move, those are big decisions. I mean, that's big life stuff that perhaps, if you're not doing what you're put on this earth to do, certainly figure that out and try to improve that. But sometimes we're just like, we got family commitments and we got the mortgage and we got the car and we got these things. So maybe we can't do that big, go start a new career at a new place with new people. But what's great is one of the things you can do to influence how much income you have coming in, this is the greatest time, I think, in the history of civilization for side hustles.
For sure.
To go out there and do a side gig to generate a little bit of extra money, I would say it's much easier now than it was when you came out of school.
For sure. I mean, because it's so easy with all of our mobile apps and everything else. If you want to go deliver food, you can do it.
Yep.
If you want to go buy groceries for
You
somebody,
can do it.
you can do it. And by the way, what a weird time with this pandemic that if you're a younger person, you have lots of time, and you have older people that are in a very tough situation. You're doing good too.
You are. That's
because
right.
these people would count on you and need you. So you not only are you making more money, but you're also helping those who can't provide for themselves right now. I think that's a win-win situation. And here's a challenge I want to give you if you're in your 20s. I want you to really think about your day. I want you to look at your phone. Like, I know Apple products have an audit feature where you can see how much screen time. And I want you to ask yourself, should there be maybe 2 or 3 hours of that was used for something more productive? Because I can tell you, you're going to get to your 30s and 40s and go, what the heck was I doing in my 20s? Because
my wife and I literally have that conversation.
No, it happens all the time. I mean, it happened to all of us. So I don't want you to be hard on yourself, but you're going to look back at your 20s and go, what was I doing? I mean, because you're going to see life will engulf, it'll suck out all that time and capacity that you have. And that's okay. When you're in your 20s, you're broke. So but you got abundance of time. Whereas what's sad, you get to be my age, I'm not broke. I ain't got time for anything though, guys. I'm just going to tell you, I'm getting pulled in all directions. So I got all the money, to go do the things, but I don't have time to do much of anything. So that's the balance you need to look at and figure out if there might be an opportunity with a side hustle. And we even have a case study.
I want to give you some credit here, Brian, because when I was just a wee lad in my 20s, I remember we were sitting, this was down in McDonough, Georgia. You showed me this illustration and you said, but let me go ahead and you said something really dumb, but it was like, let me show you what your future looks like, or let you peek in the future. I mean, it was impactful because it did, but looking back, it's kind of funny. But you showed me this illustration right here. And you said, let me show you how cruel, I think was the words you used, but it's not really cruel, it's just reality. Let me show you how real life is. And this is the illustration that you showed me.
Well, it is. It's one of those things where you think about what you have coming in income-wise, what your commitments are, and there's a reason we call it the messy middle.
The messy middle.
I mean, because when you're in your 30s, I mean, think about it. Not only do you start a family, but that's when the average person buys their first house.
Yep.
And you're going to figure out there's a lot of things pulling at that back pocket. So you need to recognize that. Look, there's a reason I think all the happiness surveys show once you get in your 50s, there's this confidence that comes that, yeah, you're carrying on a few extra pounds, but you know what? You don't care. You do not care. And a lot of this, that's why look at your commitments goes down to the ground. Meanwhile, your disposable income's typically all right. It's gone down a little bit, but the separation is tremendous. Heed this to see if there's something actionable for you.
But you might be out there listening and say, oh, I don't want to drive Uber, or I don't want to do Postmates, or I don't want to do fill in the blank, because it's only a couple $100, right? It's only a couple $100 a month. Well, we asked Daniel to put together an illustration for us, and hey, how valuable can a side hustle be? How good can this be? And this is what we found out with. Someone that starts at 30 years old, if we assume they can earn 9% on average, if they save an extra $200 per month starting at 30, that could be almost $600,000 by the time they get to 65. I'm going to say that again. The little side hustle, the little thing that you're doing that generates an extra $200 a month, if you take that $200 and you invest it towards retirement, it can mean an extra $600,000 by the time you get to retirement. 200 doesn't sound all that crazy. 600,000 sounds like a big deal when you think about retirement income.
I mean, and that's going to be the part that lets you feel comfortable enough in retirement to have the margin to really enjoy life.
Absolutely.
So we spent a lot of time on making more. But what if you look at your situation and maybe you're in the messy middle. You're in your 30s. You're like,
I ain't got time. Ain't no way.
Let me put the baby down to watch this. Listen to this next section. Let's talk about spending less. I mean, and that's what we know. We don't talk about budgeting a ton because I've heard you guys asking for content on cash management plans and forced scarcity. We're going to create something on that
for sure.
But it's but budgeting, if you haven't reached to the point of understanding having a cash management plan, there is no shame in doing a budget.
Nope, not at all.
Get out there and do we have any resources on our website with the budget?
We have some old ones. We don't have any good ones. That's one of the things we're working on as we're growing the Money Guy family. Have more resources available.
Put that notation.
That's him
when
marking
you edit
it
the video.
He's putting it on the whiteboard right there.
We need that resource.
So we're going to work on some sort of budgeting, some sort of cash management tool. But yeah, if you haven't mastered those foundations, I had a phone call with a client the other day. He's like, "Hey, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life, but I just don't know where it's going. You know, I feel like I've got this going on and that going on, and I really don't have a beat for it." And I told him, I was like, "Hey, I know that you're a wealthy individual. You have a super high income. You're in a great spot." But maybe you need to go back to the basics and for the next month or two, just track where your spending is going. Because it's hard to know where your money's disappearing to if you're not actually marking it down and figuring out, okay, where's this money going? So that you can figure out where you can squeeze, where you can cut out some margins. I have another client, and you know this one. She had like a subscription to everything you could possibly subscribe to. Like she had like the Netflix and the Hulu and what's the clothing that they send to you?
Stitch
Fix. She wasn't using any of them. And I told her, I was like, hey, why don't we think about cutting some of these out? And she's like,
trimming that footprint.
Oh my goodness, it saved me like hundreds of dollars a month on stuff that I didn't even realize. If you start tracking, that's a really easy way to find some extra money in the budget.
There's no doubt if you will just get very deliberate with how you're spending every dollar. There's a reason, we just did that show on Graham Stephan, and he lives kind of a minimalistic lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I've often told you guys that I had a conversation with my wife when we were in our 20s and 30s. If she'd just go on this journey with me, by the time we were in our 40s, we'd kick it up a notch. And I'm not telling you to be a miser.
No,
I don't want you to be Scrooge
not at all.
McDuck, where you're not, or maybe Scrooge McDuck was, but just think about, Ebenezer Scrooge.
And Ebenezer Scrooge McDuck.
He was such a miser that he's not enjoying any of the money. I want you to have a bedazzled basic life. I still want you to go on trips and other things, but instead of spending $12,000 to go to Europe, you might be spending $4,000 to go to Europe. I mean, those are the things. You can still have a lot of the same experiences. It's just not going to be the luxury variety, but that's okay because your memories blossom anyway. And while you're in your 20s, while you're in your 30s, you put up with a lot more than you can, I promise, when you're in your 40s and 50s and you're waking up in the middle of the night naturally. Just so you can deal with a lot more in your 20s and 30s. So just deal with those decisions, enjoy life, but think about in a bedazzled way. What are some ways I can kick up my life, but not jeopardize the savings goals and the other things I need to be doing?
Now, here's a little bit of cold water. One of the things you have to do, because lifestyle creep is a real thing, and it exists for all of us, and it happens. If you're someone who finds yourself in a place where your lifestyle has kind of expanded, possibly beyond where it needed to, you need to have a hard conversation with yourself. If you've listened to one of the shows we've done on car buying, and we say, hey, if you have a luxury automobile, it has to be paid off in 12 months. And you say, well, guys, I got like this 60-month loan on my BMW, and I can pay it off in 12 months. We would argue you probably can't afford that car.
I've had that phone call with some folks where what's bad is when they're in their 40s, like, I've got to do the BMW, guys. I mean, come on. I got to do the BMW. I'm just going to finance it. And I'm like, if you can't pay for it, you just can't afford that car.
You just can't afford it. That's the truth.
You need the Honda.
That's right.
I mean, what are we doing here? You know, why are we still, just because you live in this neighborhood? And that's the hard decisions I think a lot of people struggle with. That's a reason we have that rule on financing. We do give you flexibility, but if you can't pay same as cash on luxury vehicles, you can't afford a luxury vehicle.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So take heed of that. So I think we came pretty hard on, we're trying to create more spice or more lubrication through the process, which is money.
Sure.
We want to make sure you're greasing the skids so you can create least resistance for your success, and that what's going to provide that viscosity is going to be money.
I love it.
None of this was in show
I have
prep.
you just talking about lubrication, viscosity.
I just want people to know money is going to be the lifeblood that creates.
That's right.
Because there are, just in review, two things you can control: your discipline, and then the money that's created from that margin that you can put into the process. Those are the only two things you can kind of control. And sadly, the next component I'm going to talk about, time, is the most valuable, but actually the most out of your control too.